For those out there in the computer land, we are waiting. We'll probably be starting at 6:45, so just sit tight. Thank you.
All right, we're going to get started. First is we're going to call the meeting to order and the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and through the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Ms. Bolenbacher.
Here.
Mr. Chandler is absent. Ms. Compitello.
Here.
Mr. Lavdasser is absent. Mr. Marks is absent. Mr. Oliverio.
Here.
Mr. Radilla.
Here.
Mayor Perry.
Here.
Solicitor Corbel.
Here.
And myself. We have a quorum.
All right, great. Okay, the consent agenda. Oh, that's really loud. Consent agenda, the approval of the minutes. So all on the OneDrive was the October 13th, 2022 minutes, along with the bill list from October 27th. So motion to approve the October 27th, 2022 consent agenda.
So moved.
All right, Vince,
Second.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. Public comments on agenda items. At this time, citizens may address the Crafton Borough Council on any issue appearing on today's agenda. Only residents and taxpayers of the Borough of Crafton will be permitted to address the council. Comments on non-agenda items will be taken at the end of tonight's meeting. Speakers will be permitted to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. Groups of people will be required to designate a spokesperson to represent them before the council, who may speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. Please sign in or raise your hand on Zoom and state your name and physical address for the record.
We have one person on Zoom, Mr. Sheets. So I will. allow him.
Anybody? No, me.
Mr. Sheets, if you could please state your name and address and then for your public comment.
Yeah, Cody Sheets, Promenade Street. I just wanted to address the question of the state requiring new decisions on fireworks around the borough. I've had discussions and or emails with every council member about this, and so you all know how I feel going into this. I think it's something that's futile. I think that people are going to do it anyway, I think that it puts a burden on our officers, whether or not they're willing to do it or not. It nevertheless puts an extra burden on our officers to go to somebody's house who has been allowed to do these things for years and years and years, and then hand them a citation over a complete ban. I think that the option of setting area and time restrictions is a much more reasonable and happy medium that could satisfy all parties involved. When it comes to the safety issue of fireworks, It's for me, it's a question of how much is the borough going to put their hands in my life? How much does my personal choices affect, the whole situation? Am I going to be personally held responsible if something happens to somebody's house, or if I'm firing off fireworks within 150 feet of an occupied residence? Personal liability has to come into play there, in my opinion. I just think it's a waste of time to try to put a complete ban on it. And I think that the blowback is going to be bigger than if you just set time restrictions on it from residents. I just think that this is a really simple and easy answer to a question. That's all I have on that topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sheets. Do we have anybody else?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
No one else
Okay.
online.
All right. I'd like to acknowledge the receipt of the written reports also on the OneDrive from September of 2022, including the treasurer's financial statement, Act 511 and trash collection and property tax collection, police building inspection, code enforcement, and library reports. All right, the president's report. So the council meeting scheduled, the next meeting is scheduled for November 24th on Thanksgiving. None of you wanted to come on Thanksgiving from our last meeting. So unfortunately, we do have to move the meeting. It was suggested for November 21st at 6:30 p.m. and to advertise accordingly. So any thoughts or comments? And does anybody want to make a motion for that to move the meeting?
I motion to change the date of the November 24th, 2022 meeting to November 21st, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. and advertise accordingly.
Seconded.
Okay, Kirsten, any discussion? I think we will have to make another decision coming up towards Christmas too. We'll look at that one. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, meeting's moved. The next item we are going to table, this is the market study. And I do want to announce that we will have an executive session quickly after this meeting.
To receive the advice of the solicitor.
On a real estate, on a borough real estate matter. All right, mayor's report.
So we have the fireworks law, the options for the borough under discussion. Solicitor Corbel, can you just give us a little overview of where we are? And then we'll open it up for discussion, and hopefully we will be able to quickly come to a choice. And at this point, we're not actually, we won't be actually passing whatever change this council recommends, but you will be directing the solicitor to construct an appropriate ordinance revision. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So there'll be plenty of time for public review and comment on the actual legislation, if that's the direction that we go. So first and foremost, if you do nothing, the state law regarding the 150-foot radius is in effect and can be enforced by your police. What you have the choice of doing is,
Can you explain the 150?
yeah, so you can't shoot the fireworks, set off consumer fireworks as defined in the law within 150 feet of a structure or a vehicle. And so when you think about it, if you put a dot in the middle of your home, for example, that's it. The radius of that is about 300 feet. So it's about a football field, right? If you put your house on the 50-yard line. So that whole area is not permitted for consumer fireworks. Those are different than display fireworks. Display fireworks are what they put off at the point on the 4th of July. They're more, display big booms into the air. The consumer fireworks that you are allowed to regulate are the smaller versions of those things that go boom and shoot into the air. Novelties, sparklers, toy caps, things like that. Those are not included. You can still do this. So what you need to think about is this something that you want to prohibit in your community? And if that's the road you want to go down, I think we asked Gateway to take a look at that.
Kirsten.
You were taking, we talked
I-
about Gateway, but then we said you would do it.
Should I interject here? I
Yeah.
did do a Google Earth look at various properties, particularly those that are larger or around the edges where I thought there might feasibly be enough space. I did some measurements and I found that there is pretty much nothing that falls outside of that 150 feet. The area that would be most likely to have potentially small little pieces of properties would be down by Ewing Road. And that's where a more official study would need to happen. But based on some eyeballing and some measurements that I took myself using Google Earth and the measuring tools that they have, there's very little that actually falls outside of that 150-foot requirement.
So just given that information, you probably would be permitted to ban it, I would think. I mean, we might want Gateway to look at those questionable areas, but it sounds to me like if you wanted to ban them completely, you could. Secondly, the other thing that you're permitted to do is to permit them at any time, meaning anybody that wanted to put off consumer fireworks in the borough would have to come to the borough, obtain a permit, pay a fee, and we would probably put the rules on the permit, et cetera. They would agree to abide by them, so they knew what the rules were, et cetera.
Can I clarify there?
Yeah,
If they do get a permit, if we go that route, it would still not be allowable to set them off within 150 feet of a structure or vehicle.
right. That's correct. So, and the law says you can't put them off on other people's property without their permission, which goes without saying, I think. And also, you're not permitted to do it on publicly owned properties, things like streets, sidewalks, parking lots, parks, et cetera.
What if you get those people's permission? But does that 150 rule still apply?
Yes.
then? Okay, so
Yep.
it doesn't matter if you get anybody's permission.
Correct. And unless there is a place that is outside that 150-foot safety limit.
Okay.
And then lastly, there is a second, I'll call it a partial ban, where you ban them on all of the time except for certain holidays around the 4th of July, around New Year's. And I think it also says you can't prohibit them on Labor Day and Memorial Day. So basically 4 holidays.
And to clarify, if they are allowed on those 4 holidays, the state law regarding not setting them off within 150 feet of an occupiable structure or vehicle still applies.
Correct. So if what Ms. Compitello is saying is accurate, having a permit or having a semi-ban versus a ban, there's really not a lot you can do there, right? So the 150-foot rule essentially provides a de facto ban, it appears, in the community. So you could rely on that. We also could, the rules in the state law around the time, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. is the only time you're allowed to set them off if they would be permitted. Like, we have to codify that in our ordinance if we want to enforce that. Again, the 150-foot rule still applies, but to the extent somebody gets permission from someone along Ewing Road to do it, they would have to wait until after 10 a.m. and before 10 p.m., except during 4th of July. I believe it's 1 a.m. So the 4th of July week, there's several days in there, not to get into the minutia, but that's so when you're looking at the ordinance, our current ordinance is out of date. It has a reference that doesn't make sense. It goes to like a building or something code. So it does need, in my view, it needs to be updated to some extent, but I just need direction from you all as to how to finesse it. And then, you know, like I said, I can draft it and then you can say, we don't like it, let's go something else. But at least my view is like, you need to get the ball rolling on this particularly if you want to have it in place before the end of the year. If you don't care, or if it's not a big issue in Crafton, you know, then I think this is something you could even punt until, you know, first quarter of next year. So it's in place for, you know, the Memorial Day, July 4th, Labor Day, summertime events.
When did the new legislation come into play?
It's been in effect since September. So
Okay.
the 150-foot rule exists today.
Mhm.
So same thing on New Year's Eve. If people shoot off fireworks in your neighborhood in Crafton, they're probably, based on Ms. Compatello's research, that is a violation of the state law. You can receive a citation from the borough police. The first offense is a $500 fine, and all subsequent offenses are a $1,000 fine. You know, that could get you through the end of the year if you didn't want to rush through and you want to think about it.
So given the state of our ordinance, and from what I believe I've heard you say, if we essentially nullified or deleted that ordinance, then we would, the state law would apply.
Correct.
Then
It
you have
applies
to-
now, even though we have the ordinance, but
Okay,
the ordinance doesn't make sense. Based under the new law and how it was written, you can get a permit now to set off fireworks in Crafton.
and there's nothing indicating,
That there's any limits or
Right.
150 foot, et cetera. Now, we could, if somebody came in to get said permit, we could inform them of those restrictions, but again, I think it's I think it's a quick fix if you wanted to go that route. But it's up to you all.
So my concern there is that if we have virtually no residences or properties that would qualify for a permit, and that's an if. I mean, I did the study based on our discussion last time, not because we were going to decide to go towards banning fireworks based on that unscientific approach, but because based on an initial unscientific approach, if we saw that it was obvious that many people would qualify for the permit, then there would have been no reason to continue looking into not allowing that option. Based on an initial look, it looks like it will be very close. So we might want to continue with an engineering study. But that aside, my concern, where I started with this, my concern is that if we do want to create a permit process, I don't think it is valuable or useful for residents to create a permit process that nobody would qualify for. That would be confusing to our residents. It would be misleading, and it would be an unnecessary use of our limited borough resources. So I'm open to exploring the option, but only if we can determine that people would actually be able to qualify for a permit.
So is the issue, I mean, fireworks are one thing, and some people like to do them, some people don't. But are we looking at like safety? So if the law is saying 150 feet is the safe distance, then do we have a responsibility as a council to keep our residents safe? Because that's what the law is saying. So is it less of the fireworks activity itself versus the safety of it? So that, I think, is why the state law is as it is, of 150 feet. And the resources involved is if people don't abide by the law and a firework hits the house, it hits people, it involves our public service, but it also harms residents that may or may not have known that fireworks are going off. And fireworks do not stay in one location. They can go miles, depending on where you shoot them. What about
do feel like there should be some level of personal responsibility. I don't necessarily think it's my job to, if, trying to find a nice way to say this. If grown adults are doing something they're not supposed to be doing and they fall down and get hurt, then they fall down and get hurt. I think it's different if it's a child doing it because they're not. Yeah, I'm trying to find a nice way to word this and I'm having a really difficult time with that. I understand the safety for your neighbors, but also that could also be the responsibility of the adult neighbors. If you see somebody setting off fireworks on your street that they know aren't safe, then maybe that's your responsibility as a community member to notify the police, because it is hard for the police to be everywhere. I don't want them to be, I don't expect them to be. So as part of this community, it's my job to let them know that something's going on that shouldn't be.
Can I interject? Mr. Marks is on Zoom and needs us to allow him to speak.
Who's that?
Mr. Marks.
Oh. That's new. Oh, it's only about 6. No, like a very short period of time.
All right, Justin.
Hello, hello. All right, cool. Thanks.
Did
I
you
didn't-
want to say anything
I
about
didn't have-
fireworks?
I didn't have anything to add yet. Sorry, I missed the the fact that it started at 6:30. I know the agenda said that, but I was basing it off the calendar invite, so just catching up.
So, Vince?
I mean, I can see both ways. I don't want to tell people that they can't set off fireworks, but in Crafton, if it's pretty much physically impossible, I kind of agree with Kirsten with why it's a process to apply for a permit when we're going to say no, pretty much. So, yeah.
Can I ask a question? So let's just say it's New Year's Eve. I set off the fireworks, but I'm not within 150 feet. My neighbor calls, the police show up. At that point, they could either cite me because I'm not within the 150 feet or give a warning and says, because you're not in 150 feet.
Well, does the state law provide for a warning?
It's in the discretion of the responding officer, but as the mayor, I think you have
That's
some
right.
discretion on how you direct officers.
Okay.
So, but if we allowed the exception of the New Year's Eve, I forget what example I used. If we allow that exception, and I think Kirsten, you made this point, if it's within 100, if it's within that 150 feet, can't do it regardless. So literally, there's nowhere to fire. Consumer fireworks can be shut off in Crafton, with the exception of probably Ewing Road.
But potentially, and again, this was a loose look. I did some measurements. I didn't have the property lines on there, but looking at it, it looked like even along Ewing Road, which was the area I thought was most likely to potentially allow it, even along Ewing Road, the houses are still too close together. So at best, it might be the rear little corners of some of those yards.
The building inspector did a similar analysis and he came to the same conclusion.
So are there 4 choices here? Is it 150, take the state rule and that's it? As 1, 2 is ban, 3 is the permit, and 4 is the partial. So there's 4 choices essentially. So if we didn't do anything, we would just enact the state law, which is 150-foot rule, which is already in place. That
Yeah, like I think if you didn't want to put a total, if you didn't want to put a total ban in your ordinance, we would just revise the ordinance and then reiterate the state law with respect to 150 feet and just update the language, et cetera. And then you could see how it goes. This is actually the way one of my other municipalities decided to go. But I do agree that the permitting process, particularly if there really isn't a place, it does seem to be like providing false hope or misleading folks. So I really think you're at ban them or just sort of restate the state law and update the stale language that you have now. Those are probably the two.
Or the
Real-
partial.
The
holiday.
partial doesn't, it's the same thing. Like
Yeah.
that's just allowing you to do it on certain holidays. And if there's really no place to do it, why would we tell people you can get a permit for the 4th of July, but there's this like 20 square foot square along Ewing Road that you can stand in if you get the permission of whoever owns the property to shoot off whatever. So set, blow up your M80s. No one's gonna do that.
I would say that I'm not particularly in favor of simply not doing anything and letting the state law be what stands, because that puts the entire burden on our police officers to be
May I
to be
speak to
following
that?
up on that. And I think that if we're going to, assume that some people will just simply break that law, then I think it's only fair that we would require that they pay a small fee for a permit in order to do it, because there are costs to the borough in having to follow up on those calls and having to enforce anyone who is, egregiously breaking it and, enforce or dealing with any potential damage. So I think if we were to allow for it to stand, I would only support that if there were a permit process in place.
May I speak to this, please? So as mayor, the police time, place and manner, as well as public safety is my responsibility. And the chief and I have talked about this. I do know that our police department is capable and willing to enforce whatever the ordinances or state ordinances are. So they are perfectly capable. If we were to decide that we are going to stand mute and let the state law prevail, they will know it, they will understand it, and they will enforce it. So I personally see, as I'm listening to all of this, that if we go with the state law, we don't have to create the permit process that you talked about as being onerous, that if there is a call, the only call that the officer has to make is, have I been called here before? And is it within the 150 feet? And if it's the first time, we give you a warning. If I've been called here before, you're getting fined. And I see that as a pretty clear and straightforward way that this council doesn't have to take a stand that we're going to ban it entirely, and that it will provide for being able to put them off if you're 150 feet away from a structure. I mean, am I interpreting this correctly, Solicitor?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So if the police are called to a location because someone has reported fireworks being set off, how do they determine the distance from a structure? They're not going to go out and measure 150 feet at night. How can we facilitate that, or are we just putting that
So,
on
look,
them?
our officers know this borough inside and out intimately. And the truth of the matter is that most of these are going to get put off in backyards that are 65 by 65. And it's going to be very obvious. And they're going to know where there are places that maybe it's, maybe it's okay, maybe I don't know. And they'll probably issue a warning and come back later. Or ask the code enforcement or somebody to go out and measure so that they know the next time.
I will add that the other municipality I referenced, they are endeavoring to educate the community in advance of this. So people understand what the obligations are to the extent that they are paying attention. They're putting it on their website. They have an email newsletter that they sent out. They're going to put it in there. So, yeah, I mean, you can inform people and hopefully they will, follow the rules, but The other thing is with the police, they either have to observe it, right? Oh, I was called and I saw them do it. You have to have a witness or other evidence, a recording of it, et cetera, in order to, get the fine to stick, because we don't just send you a bill for $500. You get a citation in the mail and you plead guilty or not guilty and you go to the magistrate. And so the magistrate's only going to convict somebody if there's evidence that they actually did what they are accused of. So, there's that aspect too. But I think the approach of educating and warning on the first time, I think that should eliminate a large majority of the issues that you'll have with these moving forward. I think that would work fairly well.
Mr. Marks or Councilman Marks has his hand up.
Yeah,
Jessica, if you want to.
yeah, quick question. So I mean, what's the risk here to the borough if we just let the state rule ride? Like just let it be the standing law, and then just let like everybody else has been saying, just inform residents that like this is how it is. Here's how you can expect our officers to react in these types of situations. And yeah, what's the risk if we just do that? Why do we want to have something passed? I guess why are we pushing for an ordinance here?
Well, I don't think that there's a risk if you let the state law take effect, but we do have an ordinance on the books that is outdated. So at a minimum, I would suggest that you repeal it. So it's not in the ordinance book and someone doesn't think that they can apply for a permit. But I also can repeal it and replace it with identical language with the state law, not going further, leaving it at that. Either way would probably be legally effective, but at a minimum, we should be repealing that section of the ordinances.
I mean, that sounds reasonable to me.
So from a council perspective, do we have to make a motion? Do we to repeal and rewrite the ordinance, or what are the next steps?
If there's I don't know why it
Sounds
makes
loud.
that noise.
Mhm.
I mean, if there's consensus that that's what you would like me to do, I'll just put something together and you can put a motion on a future meeting to authorize me to advertise it once you're comfortable with it. So I'll just, it's really easy to put together a repeal ordinance. So I guess the real issue is, do you just want me to do that, or do you want me to repeal it and then just track the state law language about the safety? So that's really all the direction I need if that's where we're landing on this.
Right, and as a reminder, no, there's been a relatively recent change. If we want to if we're going to make a change to an ordinance, do we still need to have a public hearing on this?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, so there would be a meeting where there would be a motion to advertise, which we could take public comment on the draft. Then it would come before council at a meeting of 2 to 4 weeks later, and there would be opportunity for public input at that point as well.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
So I'd like to make the recommendation that we retract our current ordinance, which is not legally enforceable at this point, and continue with doing the advertisement, education of the public, and abiding by the state law as it is written for our community.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
I would say I do have a quick question. I mean, I know that it looks like most of the state law that we've been referencing up to this point has been pointed at individuals wanting to set off fireworks. What about businesses? Like obviously we as a borough set off fireworks every year. Is the law different there at the state level?
Yeah, it is. Those fireworks, the fireworks we're talking about are called consumer fireworks. They're the ones that you can buy at Phantom Fireworks or at the roadside stands during the holidays. The fireworks the borough puts off they're called display fireworks under the law, and they're not regulated. You can continue to do that without any just following the rules around fire safety, et cetera, when it comes to those kinds of fireworks.
Well, it looks like like, I'm looking at our code right now for fireworks, and it looks like it does include person, firms, corporations. So it doesn't look, do we specify like what type of firework? It doesn't look like we do, unless I'm missing it.
Well, that kind of distinction didn't exist at the time
Because they actually weren't legal in Pennsylvania.
until 5
Yeah.
years ago or
Mhm.
something. And this is a response to the legalization and complaints that folks have levied against, the fireworks in their neighborhoods at odd hours and, that sort of thing. So that's why.
Yeah, asking too, I guess, just because like if our code, it looks like it includes people, firms, corporations, so that would include some of the larger, like the larger fireworks, like, and we, I guess under our code, we would be saying that those businesses, firms, whoever would also need to be coordinating with the borough for a permit, right? Today.
What he's saying, Justin, is our current code is not enforceable as it is because it is outdated. So that's part of this exercise here, is that what we currently have on the books needs to be changed based on the new state law from September.
I'll say this, that CVS or Dunkin' Donuts can't set off the fireworks. A person has to do it, and that person would be cited under the state law.
So I think we've.
So to the last recommendation that you made, to remove the ordinance that we currently have and go with state law, do you intend that to include an updated ordinance that simply confirms what the state law is within our ordinances? Or are you suggesting that our ordinances be silent on this issue? I would look to the solicitor for an opinion on whether it's better to enshrine that into our ordinances or not, but I'm asking this because I'm cautious about not saying anything in our ordinances, and I don't think that gives good direction to our residents who might be looking for answers.
It's legally unnecessary to restate it, but if you've ever heard of the a belt and suspenders approach to things, that's what I would describe it as. If you just restated it, it's really not harming you so long as it's consistent with the law at the state level. If you think that's a tool to help inform your residents moving forward, it's not going to cost you much more for me to type that in or one of my associates to do that.
So the recommendation was that to retract our current ordinance because it is not legally enforceable, to take the state ordinance as it is to become our ordinance, to match our ordinance, and then do the motion to advertise, educate the public, get public response, have the hearing, all the things that we need to do going forward. It's not a motion, it's more of, do we want to give the direction to the solicitor? This is good. Aaron? Kirsten? Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it. Like I said, if it's not legally necessary to pass one at the borough level, I'm not sure why. Like, repeal is fine. I'm not sure why we would want to put it on our books if there's a chance it changes in another 5 years, but yeah.
Okay.
That's why you have to amend it then at that point. So it's just one more legal ad and an hour of attorney time.
Okay. Anything? Okay. All right. Solicitors report. You're up again, Steve.
I don't really have an update on the newspaper. Everything's status quo as to how we discussed it the last time. The strike is still ongoing. There were a couple of reports that the Butler Eagle was printing the Post-Gazette and distributing it in Allegheny County. I don't know if they're still doing that. Like, it caused somebody from the city paper, which is now owned by the Butler Eagle, their editor, to resign over it because it's viewed as like union busting, et cetera. So I think our plan is sound. I still endorse what we're doing, and when the strike is over, if it ever ends, then we can go, or if the paper gets published somehow, we won't use these other sources, but we're still making our good faith effort. So everybody knows what's going on with the borough as it relates to public notices. So check the Gazette 2.0, check the borough website. That's where you can find that information, or call your friendly council person or mayor, and they can let you know as well.
Great. Manager's report.
There was a written report in the OneDrive, and I was just pulling up just a quick update on the fire inspection ordinances. They are underway. We've been getting callbacks, and we do have some inspections already scheduled. So that is being positively embraced so far.
Thank you. All right, standing committees, finance and administration, Ms. Perry.
We don't have anything for the meeting because we will be doing a budget workshop at the end of this meeting, after this meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you. Community services and infrastructure, Ms. Compitello.
All right, first item is the Broadhead Sewer Separation Award Letter. This is our motion. We also discussed this at the last meeting. The borough submitted a GROW grant application that was approved by the Alcoasand Board of Directors. We were awarded $3,738,400 in grant funding, which is 81% of the determined eligible total project costs of $4,633,478.72. We did announce this award at the last council meeting, and we had some discussion about it. It is less than we initially requested. And the reason for that was discussed at the last council meeting as well. Just repeating this for anyone who might be listening. For the Broadhead Sewer Separation Project, it is a very valuable project that will, it's valuable to the borough. It will help us meet our legal requirements in the coming years for reducing our stormwater overflow. At this time, though, we had put together a grant request for more funding based on the way that Alcoasand was calculating their funds in past years. We thought we would qualify for more. They have changed their funding structure, and they gave out less money this year to Crafton and to most other municipalities. So we were disappointed by that, but we are still appreciative of the multiple millions of dollars we have been given in this grant. And we also are aware that we have received more than many of our surrounding communities. So we are still in a good position. It is less than we wanted, but it is a good first step. And we will continue trying to seek additional grant sources to cover the rest of the project as it was initially, as it has been designed in the concept so far. At this time, we have 45 days to accept this grant funding, and then we'll have several years before we have to spend it. So with that, I would like to make a motion to accept the Alcoasand GROW Program Grant Agreement for the Broadhead Sewer Separation Project in the amount of $3,738,400.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
I,
Opposed? All right, motion passes.
Right, the second item on our agenda here is a DCNR grant resolution. We also have been discussing in past meetings, and it was listed in last month's meeting, the last council meeting 2 weeks ago, some of the upcoming grants that we were intending to pursue. So here's one that is coming up. This is the submittal of a project application for a trail feasibility study for Creekside and Chartiers Avenue Trail. The estimated cost for this is $60,000. This is a project that came out of the Parks Master Plan study that was completed earlier this year. At that time, the next available grant that was open was not applicable for trails, but there was substantial community support for some of this trail improvements and trail projects in that project. So we now have located a grant that will apply for this trail project. And that is what this grant resolution is for, to seek this trail feasibility study that came out of that Parks Master Plan study for $60,000. So with that, I will make a motion to adopt resolution 2022-025, requesting a grant of $30,000 from DCNR for a trail feasibility study for the Creekside and Chartiers Avenue trails.
Second by Ms. Bolenbacher. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Right, moving on with more grants. The Multimodal Transportation Fund grant resolution. The borough is also applying for this additional grant. We're applying for $1,452,949.05 in grant funding for phase 2 and 3 of the Crafton Boulevard Streetscape project. This includes requesting improvements at the elementary school, which the school district supports. The streetscape is anticipated to provide improved safety and beautification of the corridor by reducing traffic speed through narrowing the road, providing bump outs for parallel parking, as well as new concrete curbing, sidewalks, lighting, and landscaping. And that would all be along Crafton Boulevard in front of the school. The overall project cost is $2,190,614.05. And the borough is already under contract for a chunk of that to the quantity of $737,665 for phase 1 and phase 2. So we're able to use that current investment that we've made for phase 1 and 2 as our match for this grant to pursue the improvements in phase 2 and 3. So with that, I'd like to make the motion to adopt resolution 2022-026, requesting grant funding in the amount of $1,452,949. Let me say that over again. $1,452,949.05 for phase 2 and phase 3 of the Crafton Boulevard Streetscape project.
Second.
Second, Mr. Rodilla. Discussion?
May I ask a question of clarifying? I know that we're saying that there's the 737,000 is our match, but I'm not understanding when I see a overall project cost of 2 million and we're applying for 1.4. So it looks to me, the way this is worded, that we will be paying an additional $700,000. And I, from my understanding of conversations in the past, that's not actually what's happening. Can somebody clarify this?
This was the same language that we used to apply for the DCD multimodal. That was the language that we'd used in the past. I can shoot an email out to to council, giving the breakdown. That's something.
Okay, so I understand that may be the wording, but are we saying that $737,000 from that we are already paying for phase 1 and 2, so that the 2.19 million is a project cost that includes some of the things that we've already done and already paid for?
I believe that is correct, but I would want to verify that and have a, subsequent information to council.
2.19 million. And we don't have the engineering breakdown here tonight. This was discussed at the last meeting. That's the overall project cost.
Just doing quick math, the overall project is 2.1,
You add the
2.2 million.
together. You add the two together.
If you add the 1.452 million and the 737, you get,
Yes, but I'm trying to understand. How can I put this? This looks like how can I say this? We have a $2.1 million project. We're only asking for 1.45 million in funding. And I don't see how I mean, when I hear that we're going to use work that we've already done as our match.
Did this grant have a maximum that we could ask for?
there was a maximum, but I guess I'm confused so if we added all the phases up, it would be $2.2 million. We have purchased part of phase 1 and part of phase 2 for 737. To get the rest of the phases would be 1.4 million.
Okay, so that's basically what I wanted to get clarity of, that this wording was not all that clear. That the 2.19 is the cost for phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And we're already paying 737 for the work that we did in phase 1 and phase 2. Is that the correct interpretation?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry for being so dense.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Right, there is another item on our agenda, which is just a general update on upcoming grant applications. We had a longer list at our last council meeting, and at this council meeting, we see some of those are moving forward. We are pursuing every grant that we can, that we think we can qualify for. So some of the others that are upcoming that we'll continue to try to pursue are the H2O grant due December 21st. This is something that we can use as a match for the Broadhead project GROW grant, which was earlier on our agenda when we stated that we received fewer funds from Alcosan than we were hoping for. So that H2 grant is an opportunity to try to gain additional funding. There's also a small water and sewer grant that is also due December 21st, which could also be a way to gain additional funds to match for the Broadhead GROW, the Broadhead project, and the GROW grant that didn't fully cover the cost of that project. So we'll be considering, continuing to pursue those grants, and those are due in December. So we'll expect to see those on our agenda in another couple months. The next item is the multi-municipal zoning project update. There is an update on this. The consultants have completed their first phase of their 3 phases, the diagnostic report, which is their background research, their interviews with all of the municipal staff, and their review of our existing code, basically an existing conditions report after they've done all of that background work. That was presented as a draft. It has gone through council review, planning commission review, and the steering committee's review, and they have now issued their final. That was shared with council earlier this week. They've also issued an executive summary, which is a shorter 6-page or so version of the top of the reasons for the project and their top findings. It's a little bit easier to read. I would like both of those documents, the full diagnostic report and the executive summary, to be posted on the Borough website. And then when those are posted on the Borough website, I'll also ask the interim Borough manager to send out a Savvy Citizen notice. And at the Planning Commission meeting on this past Tuesday, we prepared wording to use for that Savvy Citizen notice. So that's ready to go.
What are the next steps after the posting?
Good question. So they are supposed to be working on starting an initial draft of their rewrite. And they do need to get back to me about what their next steps will be for public outreach. They do have in their scope to do some additional public outreach. So it will probably take them a few months to do an initial draft. They'll probably spend the next few months doing some code writing. But I would expect shortly after Christmas, we should be scheduling additional steering committee meeting. We should be getting some updates from them on the status of the code rewrite, and we should also be scheduling some kind of public event or public informational materials or review opportunities to be letting people know what is being updated and why, and give them a chance to learn about it. And then the last item on the agenda for my committee is the stop sign on Bradford. Mr. Lavasser has been following up on that a bit more closely, and he's not here tonight, so I'm not sure if Mr. Sample has any updates on that.
The engineers did look at the intersection, and there's some vegetation that is going to need to be removed in order to safely have the stop sign in that location, to move the stop sign. So we're working with the property owners now to have that vegetation removed.
And that will be it. The borough will be covering that.
That's something that we'd probably want to discuss. So, well, it's fine now. And now is as good a time as any. So when, yes, we would be covering the cost. We would, when we do any work on private property, we do not have Public Works do it. We subcontract that out because of liability purposes. So likewise, we would be subbing this out to remove that vegetation.
When that stop sign is relocated, what will be the process to let people know that it's coming and that there's a change in the pattern?
We'll have that at a council meeting. There'll be an ordinance change for that stop sign. When the stop sign does go in, we'll have blinking lights on that stop sign. All those steps will be taken. So it will be an ongoing process to get there, and there'll be plenty of public notice out there. But we will have lighted there's stop signs out there that will flash, and we'll have something like that at least initially until, you know, it becomes more of a habit for everybody.
So this is in addition to the stop signs that are already there on both.
Those would be removed.
On Crafton Boulevard. That was the plan, to
And-
remove those two.
It was based
And the
on the
council, so
engineer's
council
review.
has already approved all of that?
This has been
So-
going through engineer review. They had looked at the traffic patterns, and under the current laws and regulations, we couldn't do a three-way stop at that location. It didn't meet the requirements.
And what specifically are those requirements that we're not meeting for a three-way stop?
The engineer had described
There was
that
a
in
couple.
more detail at a previous meeting,
was a-
but it was something about site distances and a number of traffic counts, the
So
quantity
we've
of
done the
traffic.
We've done the traffic count study at that intersection.
I can get the engineer to provide a summary, but the data does not warrant a three-way stop. Several criteria need to be met, and I can pull that up as we're talking here, but it does, the criteria for an all-way stop is not met at that intersection. Now, yes, it is not met at that intersection.
So, and council has already deliberated and made a decision about this? I know I missed a couple because I was
Yeah.
sick.
No,
It's
it
been
was discussed,
we
but
haven't.
not a decision. So something for a stop sign change to that. Is there an ordinance or resolution ordinance that we have? Okay, so I think part of this is that also discussing, because it's going to require some things changed on the residents' property, removal of shrubs and trees and things like that.
Is anybody against moving the stop sign to this location?
Honestly, I'm not sure.
I mean, from my point of view, I think we need a stop sign there, but I'm curious, Doug, you were saying it doesn't meet the requirements to necessitate one, but does that mean that we couldn't do a three-way stop?
We are not allowed to do a three-way stop in that location. We can have a stop sign, and we asked the engineers to study what was the better and more recommended location, and their recommendation was to put it on the secondary street and not the primary street. Crafton Boulevard being the through street is the primary street, and the residential street, Bradford, is a fully residential street that is not a through street. That makes it secondary, and the engineer's recommendation was that that was the safer place, the more recommended place to have the stop sign. But we did look into the idea of having a three-way stop, and we were told that we did not have that option.
So what we can do is, we don't have any ordinance or anything on here, is the action item is to at least discuss with the property owners. And then for the next meeting, put something on the agenda to approve. Okay.
I do have to question why you're moving forward with discussing with private property owners something that this council has not yet approved.
I'm not going. I didn't want to say that, but I will anyways. No, I'm not going to move forward with talking to the property owners until council makes the authorization and the ordinance change.
Okay.
I think this is something that we'll discuss at the next council meeting when we have the engineer here, and they can present the findings of the analysis they did.
And it's the stop sign, and again, I'm just talking, saying things maybe I should. You can put a three-way stop sign there, but you can't, if somebody rolls through it, you're not going to be able to cite them for it because it's unwarranted. That's the issue you take. If you want to cite and have the enforcement issue, you can either have them on the boulevard like we do now, or switch them to Bradford. You cannot have an all three-way stop and have it enforceable.
Okay. So we're saying to authorize to prepare an ordinance for the next meeting for review and discussion with the engineer. Is that the direction?
We'll have these ordinances are pretty easy to draft, like the fire ordinance. We'll have a draft ordinance. It's just council coming to a decision on
Right.
which way you want the stop signs.
And having the engineer present during the discussion period, I think would be really helpful for everybody. Okay. This item has been on the agenda for the past 3-4 meetings, and we did have the engineer discuss it at those times, but not to this depth. And I think now that we have some property issues with residents, we want to get more information about that. Okay. Okay. Anything else?
That's the end of my committee updates.
Okay, great. Okay, community recreation, community events, Mr. Marks.
I know there's some announcements further down in the community announcements, so I'll leave those for the end. Other than that, I know that things are ready for the Halloween audio tour, and the rec board is getting ready for a light up night, planning the layout of the park, right, for the Christmas holiday. And I know that the rec board is looking for donations, you know, what, not right now, but once they get that light up night planned out and figured out. There's also a quote in the works to get the rec board some new sound equipment for use at the park. It's all, help me out here, Doug. It's all co-stars pricing, right? So we don't need anything that we need to bring to council. I don't think it's a relatively small amount, but if there's anything we need to bring up, we will. So that was it for community events. As far as the newsletter goes, I know we had hopes to get the newsletter into mailboxes earlier this week. We're hoping to get it out in the next couple of days here, and we have an ask out to the
It's out
printers.
already. I
Okay.
got mine. Okay.
Sweet. Nice. Okay, so they should be hitting mailboxes today if, if folks haven't gotten them yet. Today or tomorrow. So that's it.
Great. Commission vacancy, Ms. Bolenbacher.
Thank you. We've had a nice little pop of interest. We've had a couple different applications. We have had a few interviews. We have a few interviews left. Some of them were just a little too close to the meeting to get the motion on the agenda, but we did get one. So I am going to put out a motion now to appoint Jeff Clark as an alternate to the zoning hearing board.
Second.
Second, Mr. Riddle. Any discussion? Right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
And as you can see on here, we still have an opening for the civil service, one for the rec board, one for the library board. And there is another one coming up for the zoning at the end of the year. But hopefully by the time we come to our next meeting, one or two of those will be filled as well.
All right, great. Continued great job by the vacancy committee in filling our 20+ openings to get them down to this number.
So, may I ask a question? I think, did I hear you say that there were some interviews that you were working on, but maybe haven't interviewed everyone that had applied, and that's the reason some of those are not on here yet?
Correct, which actually reminds me of a question. Because we haven't, there's one that there's been some multiple interest on. And because we haven't appointed anybody yet to that board, are we required to interview everybody? Or if we liked somebody already, can we appoint them?
I think these are at the discretion of council, right? So,
Not legally required, but just consider
But recommended.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I wanted to check. Thank you.
I think we're already in October, so we're going to probably have a brand new
Yeah,
list.
but we have somebody who applied for one that we've already interviewed someone for. So I wanted to, I'm interested in interviewing that person. I just wanted to know if I had to, or if I just could, I guess.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, the COG, this is me now. So the last COG meeting was last Thursday at the Ingram Borough Building. My report there is that they did have 6 applicants to this UCC board. They were struggling to find applicants. And the direction that they're going to do, and again, this is the appeals board, is to bring all 6 on and have some substitutes. They only need 3, and then they would have some substitutes there that they could fill in if something happens. Everything else was just additional updates on some funding and other items. The other big news is that we will be hosting the COG meeting in December at 6:30. These are not open to the public, I believe, as members of the COG council members are able to attend. So I would encourage all council members to attend if you can. And I think they've reached out to Doug for the details and the food and all of those things.
Where will that be held?
Here, or in that community center. What's that? Yeah, for the COG, because we don't decide anything there, we just attend. So, not a far drive for anybody, so it's good to see. And the next COG meeting, sorry, is November 17th in Bridgeville, and that is at 6:30 in the Bridgeville location. I'm assuming Mr. Rodella would attend that, or Kirsten, or anybody else. Okay, community announcements, upcoming budget workshop and council meeting. So Thursday, November 10th at 6:30 is the next council meeting. And the budget workshop, just as tonight, will be right after the council meeting. And then, of course, we have the November 21st council meeting that is also 6:30 that we just approved tonight. The 3rd annual Haunted Crafton audio tour that Mr. Marks had mentioned is underway through October 31st. If you'd like further information, you can go to the council website. The Spooktacular Haunted Mini Golf will be open weather permitting. The last weekend is this tomorrow and Saturday, 7 to 9, $2 to pay. The annual tradition of trick-or-treating will occur this Monday between 6 and 8. The police department and fire department will be out. Please, practice safe driving if you are driving during that time period. Election day is coming up in a few weeks, November 7th, 7 to 8. Please check your polling locations again, as the American Legion is not a polling location anymore. They have been moved. What's that? Did I say something? 7 to 8. But November 8th, next on Tuesday, November 8th. The Crafton Boulevard ribbon cutting is actually tomorrow at 10 o'clock. And this is at the Crafton Elementary School parking lot. Representative Deasy, Fontana, school officials, borough elected officials, and gateway engineers will be attending. We'll be cutting the ribbon, and there will be some words spoken. The public is encouraged to join, and light refreshments will be served. Great. Any additional community announcements or anything else from council? Public comment. This is at this time, citizens may address the Crafton Borough Council on any issue. Only residents and taxpayers of the Borough of Crafton will be permitted to address the council. Speakers will be permitted to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. Groups of people will be required to designate a spokesperson to represent them before the council, who may speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. Please sign in or raise your hand on Zoom and state your name and physical address for the record.
We do have Mr. Sheets on Zoom. Mr. Sheets, you can speak now.
Cody Sheets, 152 Promenade. The things that I'd like to address are, again, things that I've already written all of you council members about, and it's the state of your council. When this council started, there was a new life to it. There was a vigor to get things done, and some sort of motivation and fire in every single new member or everybody who was voted in as council members. And now there's quite the opposite. There is a lack of effort by some of you. There is a overworking by some of you as a result of that lack of effort by others. An example I'd like to use is Ms. Compitello. Ms. Compitello, though I may disagree with you on some things, I think you are perfect for the position you're in. I think that you've come in with experience. I think that you've come into every meeting with good intention, and that you've put the work in. And I think that every new member should use you as an example on how to handle things. And at the same time, as leadership, both you and the president, do you guys listen to your council? Do you guys ask questions? Do you guys communicate at all outside of council meetings? Because from what I can tell, you don't communicate. And there can be communication without decisions being made about votes. I've lost count of how many questions that have been asked tonight that could have been solved with simply communicating with each other about what's going on in the borough that you serve. I just think that those of you who are not interested in putting effort forth should just step down. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being in over your head and not understanding what you signed up for. And, I think that if you feel that way, then you should step down gracefully and with dignity, and let somebody who is able to make the time commitment and the commitment to the community handle business. I have grave concern about where everything is kind of headed here as far as how mundane everything is. And things can be mundane and also be good. However, look at your audience. You don't have anybody paying attention to you like you did when you first started. And it's kind of discouraging and dysfunctional, as I said in my email. And I really hope that compromises can be made by leadership and also by members of council. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Oh, there we go.
Mike DeCecco, 42 Coulter Street. I'm not going to beat you guys up. Just thank you for your time and serving the community. Although this is only the first meeting I've ever been to, so I might change my mind later. I just want to mention I came here from a Bible study, and before I left, they wanted to lay hands on me because I told them I'd come.
Mhm.
And I don't think that was very good. I just want to ask a question about the stop sign thing. Would it maybe be worth it to put that third one in there, even if you couldn't understand, you couldn't cite people? Like, would there still maybe be some value? Because I don't know how many people can just run through there thinking, okay, they can't cite me. You know, I think it might still make things a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are we supposed to respond? I think that's it's worth asking about. I think some of us have already asked that, and I think that's exactly why we as a council have decided that we would like to make sure this is something that we talk about with our engineer here to give us their recommendation for what is going to be safe or not, because I personally have always liked the idea of 3, but we do need to hear from our engineer.
I might mention that we actually have a number of places where we have speed signage that isn't enforceable either. I think it's historically helped us.
All right. No more public comments. The meeting is adjourned. Reminder that we do have a budget meeting, budget workshop right now that's open to the public, of course. We're going to start. Yes, absolutely. Same.
Is there any way we could do the executive meeting first? Because I need
For the community out there, we are taking a short break and we'll be back 5 to 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
This resolution is from last month, and then this is 2025.
Yeah, I saw this on
The multimodal still
drive.
hasn't been created yet because it's all in the grant application.
Yeah, I saw these on the drive. Okay.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Talk to you in the morning.
So are we, there's Marilyn over here, very far from all of us.
I'm here.
Justin, you're there? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So do we start this meeting or we just,
Roll
we
right
don't
into
have,
it.
we just, okay. Okay.
I know things.
Oh, yeah. You're gonna have to talk.
Oh, here, let me do this.
She should be a permanent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is gonna be a hot mic.
Okay.
That's
Got it.
hot mic.
Got it. Okay. When we were talking about putting the budget together, the most recent is what the engineering committee and Colette and the finance have been looking at on the capital budget. So we're gonna let you take that first piece and then I'll take the rest of it.
If you go, yeah, all the 3 Excel sheets are.
Oh, no, that's
open.
not mine. Your copy? Okay, I will bring it. Oh, okay. Oh, let me double check.
Oh, it's the general. We're doing the general today.
At our last meeting, we went over the capital expense and we just wanted to start by, because there were some
Right.
things that we had to fix.
Mhm.
So we just wanted to bring it up and show that,
Oh, good. Okay.
that those things have been fixed. Just quickly, make sure everybody's happy with that. And then we'll go right into the general budget.
This is the one you were looking for, right?
Right.
I didn't
And
realize that was updated on this one. Okay, sorry.
Is this the exact one that was on the OneDrive or is it changed?
I don't think there've been any changes to it.
No,
Okay.
when you all had your meeting, there were a couple things that just needed to be tightened down a little bit, no major changes. So we went back to my office to get those done and then embedded in this, but it's,
Here's. Did you have a question? Just the screen. Just turn around.
Is that the one you wanted? Okay. I thought you wanted one with the yellow. Okay.
Oh.
Justin, can you see the screen?
No.
No. Okay. Doug? He's not sharing.
Log me into Zoom.
They're not share. It's not.
Yeah,
sharing.
you'll just need to open up the Zoom meeting and hit share screen. And
Zoom icon. Share screen again.
Hit screen.
Oh, that's right. With Zoom, you gotta keep changing them. Okay, hold on. This is where my eyes. It's maybe eyes. There we go. Yeah, pick which one. Is that the right one?
there we go. Now I can see it.
Oh, right. Technology is not my friend tonight. Sorry.
So basically, some of the things that we were not accurate, so we were trying to show show how much, grant and how much, the CapEx for the bond for 2022. This is one of the ones that's envisioning like a whole cost of the multi-year thing here. So we make those changes. And then, we can over to, move it to the left. We have, based on our discussion, we, decided that
Hey, Coletta, you might want to grab the mic off the mic stand because I know I can't hear you.
Oh, yeah. How about, do you want this?
All right. So, we have the Linden Park where we took that off for this year. And I'm looking to see where that class, can we go all the way to the right, Marilyn? 'Cause I think we're missing a couple. Or is that as far? Budget cap, cap app, Woodlawn Blight, DCNR. Okay. All right. Yes, so then we have, if we look at a line, oh Lord, I'm having trouble looking at this myself.
Which one are you looking for?
Well, we were talking about the Broadhead, that we were pushing off, that we are not going to do anything with in 2023. Also the Linden, or not Linden, the park, and then the Public Works where we reduced, I don't think this is the right tab.
This is the one I thought you would wanted, which was.
Yeah,
one
no,
with
this
yellow
was the
on it.
one we were working on last, but this, I'm not sure that it was placed in here.
Maybe just go to the main tab. Because that had everything.
The main tab is the combined,
Yes.
right?
And that was in the Linden Park, everything is in there.
Right, where we're not spending anything. And those were the biggest changes. Okay,
They're there and. Pardon? I don't know why those have hidden. On mine, it didn't hide them. When you open it, it can hide those. There you go. Yeah, I thought it was the one with the yellow that you guys had worked off of.
yeah. Right. 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 Where are we seeing the Public Works building?
Well, Public Works comes under. Public Works capital expense is just funded out of the bond. That's why I thought you wanted that one with the yellow lines on it. I thought that's one you guys had worked off of.
Well, if you go back and look, no, I don't think that is the one that, maybe I'm wrong. So,
Yeah, it wasn't in that last meeting, so I'm not sure
Right.
when you all did that. That's the CapEx one. And that's the breakdown.
Neither one of these because the one that we had been working on, I had done a lookup to align the engineering expenses next to the expenses for, right, yes, but the worksheet that we were working off of last time, they were down here, but they were all also up there. But I think this has the accurate information. It's showing where we adjusted the public works building down to 400 and the engineering. See, I had put those in the same order as the ones at the top in my mind. October? This should be what's on the OneDrive. This is the, or.
Yeah, I don't. Anna had sent over what's on the OneDrive.
And that would. Well, then should we just open that one? I'm about ready to. That would be the most recent, all the time, change the one.
I'm gonna stop the share on this. Is this the one, what version?
This is one I've got. No, this is the one that Doug was gonna work on. Okay. That because it's year over year that we need to do some more work on. Just a second, let me. The one you have is yours. Okay. So Doug, you're looking to get the one.
This is the one on the OneDrive, the proposed 2023 budget. There's the CapEx. I'll let you drive.
Yes, this is it. This is the one we were working with last time because this is where we brought the, oh, thank you. All right, yeah, this is the one that we were working with. So, the things that we changed, can we get this talking thing off of there? Doug? Let me see if I can move it. There it goes. Okay, thanks. All right. So we started with the things that were already underway. And then Emily, Public Works, where we changed that to a 400,000. But if we're further up on the Crafton Boulevard separation to the right, that's where we had the amount of grant and so a couple more rows over where we change that to be just the amount that would be coming out of the 2023 budget. This would be here, the 272 and 48. And then where we did take off the park and I think we also took the part of the pool off because that won't be in the 2023 budget. So Marilyn, I'm gonna slide it over to the left.
Left?
Yeah, over to the we want to see the projects. Okay, so and then if we come down from Public Works, the pool house is where we made changes and made notes that we expect to expend 250,000 of the potential 750,000 in 2023, and that there is some work being done to get more of a match, which we talked about, but that'll be work that gets done in the next year to work on more grant money. Then Broadhead separation. We talked about the fact that we do have multiple years, more than 3 to use these funds, and that we will probably expend engineering costs to prepare bids for it. So we've made those changes there. And we took that Belvedere reconstruction off. So something to be worked on in the future. Right, exactly. And that's why we put it there because it was originally going to be part of Broadhead. So as we look for more funds over the next couple of years, that would get folded in. And I do think those were the main changes from our capital expense. And I don't know if anybody's got any questions or see anything that we missed that we discussed changing. You're checking it out, John?
Yeah, I already looked at this. So
Okay.
It was right last night.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that's, we're gonna have to move more to the left so we can see the line that says flooring in, yeah, so we've got the flooring. And then, of course, the turnaround, we took out the flooring we put in. And we increased a little bit from where we were, from the 60 to the 85 to cover all of the flooring and not just the carpeting. So we're good with where that stands? Okay. Okay, nobody have any questions? All right, so let's just move on to the main attraction, which is the general budget.
And just we had talked about before, the next committee meeting, just so everybody knows, finance committee will be looking at, this is the piece of the capital expenditure, the bond money, everything's 2023. Finance committee will then be looking at the rest of the multi-year project that's hanging out over.
Right,
the
so
funds are
that,
looking forward.
what you call the placemat, John?
Yeah.
Where we'll see where these projects will fall in future years.
Yeah, so they
way
haven't,
we're
they
looking
haven't
at them
dropped
now.
off, they haven't fallen into oblivion.
So
All right,
are we going to get the placemat with those additional columns for 2024?
Grant is
Right.
working right now,
By-
updating that after we get, all we went through today and then update.
Okay.
And then
Right.
he will be at that meeting for your finance committee meeting next week.
With
He's
actual
more relevant
finance
to he be
committee.
there than me, because he's been working with you on all this.
And then then we'll have that available for council at the next meeting. Because these are the numbers that affect what we're after, but we know that that larger sheet gives more perspective.
Because you're likely to be asked, well, what about the rest of the project?
Yeah. We
Yeah.
have to.
So that will be the focus of the committee meeting then next week, the finance committee. Because it's not this year's budget, but it's finance committee. And if we got enough funds remaining, and how's it gonna work and how's that?
All right. Want this back?
How are you talking about the other, or are you?
Yes, Marilyn's gonna.
Okay, what I will talk about, the first thing is just to, real generally, as we walk through this budget, give you a real general, can you all hear me well enough without having to keep pacing the mic? Okay. The way this budget is laid out, some of you may have had a chance. Are you able to hear?
Justin, are you able to hear what?
Yeah, I can hear you, Marilyn. Yep.
Okay,
I'm trying to get close enough to the screen so my readers work and not so close that I keep hitting the microphone. So I'm trying to have the right balance here. Okay, just generally how this is laid out for you all. The first page, as John has alluded to, is combined. And it takes all of the various departments, classes, everything else that's combined. And that lets you at a glance, you'll be able to see where the comparing against 21's budget to 22 actual, 22 budget to 22 actual. And if any of you have looked at this tab and you scroll to the bottom of the 2022 line, it looks like as of the end of August, we were running a deficit. That's because some significant funds come in Q4. One of it was like a $300 grant that came, $300,000 grant that came in. There's some other monies we get from certain distributions come in the fourth quarter, and the final transfers are made at that point. So we expect that 2022 will end as we had budgeted. Some things were over, some were under, but we anticipate we're going to come out, where we're supposed to be. So don't panic when you see that number.
Yeah.
That's the nature of the timing of things when they come in. But what I want to talk a little bit about is, and I'm just going to revert before we get into some of the numbers on this detail to just a graph or two. Colette had suggested this, and I think it's a great idea. One of the things we're looking at is just generally where the expenses fall out. Yeah, I'm sorry, I hadn't gotten there yet. Sorry about that. Okay, and there's two graphs here. The first one just is a dramatic sense of where income comes from by the various, we call them classes now, but the various segments of what you do. Obviously, your revenue, big revenue generator you're collecting from is administration. But this is a better graph to take a look at how that breaks out. And this is the income that comes in that's in the budget for 2023 as a percentage of the total. So you can say the biggest chunk of that comes in from admin. The next is.
I just want to throw it out there. You must be only sharing the Excel workbook because I can't see the graph in Zoom.
That's a fault of Zoom. Let me go back. I've got to unshare and reshare. I'm sorry. I forget that was Zoom.
Oh, you're okay. There should be a way for you to select the whole screen so it shows everything you're looking at all the time.
Here we go. Show all windows. Let's try that. Okay. Are you good now? You see
Yep,
it?
there we go.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm used to other online where I don't have to keep sharing and unsharing. I
Yep.
apologize.
So Marilyn, what John is asking, because, we have it labeled as administration, that in these
Mhm.
things, it's really our tax revenue.
Yeah.
Correct. It's tax revenue and other revenues that are coming in that comes through
Right.
your administration.
So you'd like to see the wording on that changed?
Absolutely, yeah. Because
Sure, I would
otherwise
agree
it
with that.
seems like Doug's doing.
Getting a lot of
Fundraising,
money in.
yeah.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
he's not,
Yeah.
it's through the tax.
So, we call it maybe general fund revenue.
Yeah, what I was checking for is where that's coming from. So it's coming from here and I can simply rename this.
Right.
then.
Well,
Mhm.
If it is tax income, then
But it's tax and other things. So it's general revenue, income, including tax revenue.
okay.
Okay,
So we're gonna change admin to general fund. What did you decide on? I'm sorry, I missed that.
General-
well, here, Because on this one, it'll be revenue, and then on the next one, it'll be,
Mhm.
well, it'll still be admin expenses.
Yeah,
When
but
we
it
go
won't
to
be
the-
taxes.
Right, so on this one, it's, it would be general revenue and tax.
It's not general revenue because it's all revenue, so I
Right,
mean, if it is
So it's-
taxes.
Well,
it's taxes
actually
and other fees.
Taxes and other fees. Yeah,
Okay,
it's not
that's
just all
what
Okay.
you wanted to
Okay, we'll call
that.
it taxes and other fees.
Good
Okay,
job. Are these charts on the OneDrive?
not yet.
No, these were put together today,
Okay,
so we will put them up there.
okay.
Yeah, and I can even make the changes here, but we won't do that right now. Then the next largest one is the capital expenditures. And that's where funds are coming in to pay for those. The sewer fund. So you can see across, and then this little breakdown of all these little ones, they get too small to put the names in, is where the little box is here. But it gives you something at a glance, to just see where, and it is interesting, and important as you think about it, because some of your areas that have expense don't generate any revenue of their own. That's something you all know because you're in and out and looking at your budget, but many of your neighbors who are looking at it would not necessarily know that. Any questions on this one? I'll go through more detail on the expenses. We have the same sort of a breakdown. You can see where the bulk of the expenses are. And again, it's just a chance to see the majority of the expenses. Capital expenditures are the biggest. Sewer fund, police, administration, public works, sanitation. And this just breaks them down the same way. So do you want to keep this called admin? Section 10, okay,
Real administrative expense.
okay.
I would suggest for the newsletter or something that this might be a great chart to have, or the above chart.
Mhm.
Um,
And then this breaks down the,
We'll make it a little more visually appealing when we put it in the newsletter.
mhm.
yeah, this breaks it out by the bigger classes that you have, which are the ones that are listed here.
Mhm.
Recreation, parks, code enforcement, and so forth. And then you have some, this also gives you a breakdown by department, some of the bigger departments where we have both revenue and expense. Admin, code enforcement, the blue is salary wages. The gold color one is employee withholdings and benefits. The gray one is just operating expenses, and the yellow one is debt service. But they're assigned to those various locations. The only one that is not included in this one is, and you had asked us to put it in. But and it has, the pool is the only one that has wages.
Right, so, but if you go to the.
It's over here, correct?
Yeah, this isn't the one that they updated, but.
And we tried that, and what happens is, and this is the
No, I
reason,
saw it, and it's just,
okay,
so what we had, is. So the one that have sent over. Later this afternoon.
that should be the one I have on the screen now. It's got the pool over here.
No. I did another one. But let me- because it demonstrates.
You can bring that, I chose not to use it because it skewed everything else and made it too hard to see the rest of it. Okay. But it's one I thought we could work on doing a better presentation if you want to do it for the public. Because the pool is the only one that has wages.
Yes, but the problem is when you look at this, it looks like safety and hospital. And so what I had to do was to scale this one on the same grid.
Oh, the same grid as the other one.
1.2 million, so that when you look across it.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
They're proportional.
Yeah, because that one's at 62,000 and this one is at 1,000,001.
Right, exactly. And so this particular piece is.
Okay, that makes sense.
And we realize that community activity, municipal property, parks and recreation, almost negligible, when you start looking at, what our police costing us,
Mhm.
and looking at that salary, the public works,
Yeah, and I think that, we got a good start. These are things that this group can have to present to the public. But the real way for this group, I think, to take a look at the actual budget. Correct, but what you want to,
Exactly what this is for.
and it's a discussion, and they see this, but if you want to refine it before you publish it in a newsletter, improve it. Yeah. Okay, we get over to the actual budget itself. And what I would recommend that everybody take a look at is, again, when you all were in you're having your other meeting, what Doug and I were talking about is often when a subject is too big and so complex, you can't wrap your head around it. People want to gravitate to what they can understand. So the combined is something that you all have been around, you understand the pieces, but you may want to gravitate to the individual ones where you feel you're more comfortable and know something about it to understand it. So for example, on admin.
One of the things that's a real boon to having the various departments or classes in their own tabs is that this is really the last year and this year, the first time that you can really see what your income and expenses and what these departments are costing you in total. In the combined budget, it is pretty much impossible to figure that out. And so I find that looking at the individual tabs gives us a much clearer understanding and much easier to ask questions about.
And I'm going to come back to the admin last, to that point. For example, here's code enforcement. Right, basically you have some income that comes in from code enforcement. You've got expenses. If you get to the bottom of that, you can look, the highlighted things in yellow were things that were identified as the employee benefit expenses and withholdings that we saw on the graph. But overall, code enforcement costs the borough $91,000. It collects fees for some of what it does. It has expenses for what it does. And it nets out that it's a overall cost to the borough of $91,000. If we look at community activities, there's a small amount of income charged for some of the banners, receipts. There are expenses that everybody has agreed that they feel are important to be spent. So the cost to the borough for community activities is $61,150. So as you look at these, you can look at the various things that contribute to that cost, and make sure you feel comfortable. That's where you want the money spent that's coming in from taxes and fees. Fire protection. It's got some income that comes in from their services.
Sure. Can we go back to community activities?
Sure.
So I'm just looking to see if I look at the increase that we have for fireworks is a significant increase. Doug, do you want to tell us about this?
There was a lot of complaint. I heard that there was some complaints. The rec board asked what a longer show would cost, so. Hence.
So I would hone in on this being something for council to say, are we comfortable with this increase?
Right. I saw this last night. I'm comfortable with it, and I figured the reasons were.
Absolutely, absolutely. But, just want to make sure that, people were looking at those sorts of things. All right, Marilyn.
Okay, fire protection. As we said, there's some income, expenses, there's some increases in expenses. There's some capital, some of those increases are caused by capital expenses been pre-approved, equipment that you've chosen to acquire. Across all of these, there's some increases for salaries. That's just keeping with what's going on with the economy. Overall, it's just a minor, what you're looking at this one is what had been budgeted prior was 193. This is up at 307. The net increase is almost
But
primarily capital expense.
Yeah, the big difference with that is, and in those earlier years, we we were not, we didn't have the equipment payments in that they were separate. They weren't on the fire budget.
You didn't see that and you didn't always see the planned expense. You saw the expense of equipment after it was bought.
Right,
You often didn't see it in the budget anticipating it.
right.
So that's.
And
how far-
then,
So when
Yeah,
you come,
we still have some final payments on. We still have,
The ladder truck is paid off next year.
yes, but so we are still, last year and this year, we had both the new vehicle, debt expense payments and had not finished the ladder truck payments. So after this year, the, debt service for the, vehicles, the fire vehicles will go down by. Do you recall how much that is?
one of the things to keep in mind too, when everybody's looking at this. Last year was the first year we went through an effort to actually budget for capital expense. It was the first time we ever did that. What's it gonna cost us and when do we have to get them and what do we need? So this is a continuing year of that decision to do that. And keep in mind, all this rolls up to that combined budget that did come out at this point to a balanced budget.
Right,
You had mentioned salaries in the fire department.
no,
No,
no, there
I
aren't
said
any
some of these
salaries.
have salary increases. There's none there. None in the fire department.
Oh, because I thought you said that's why there's an increase is because we.
Some of the others, you'll see some increases because of
You
salaries,
mentioned.
but not here.
42,000 for the handy.
So basically that should come down by about, well, by next year, it'll be a little less than 40,000 because there'll be some other raises and expenses, but there'll be a $42,000 payment that we won't be making.
Mhm. Right. That was the administration, the schedule that came out for those things, which, yeah, makes sense. Okay.
Okay. Any other question on that?
About the fire budget.
Okay, the library budget is generally an expense that you all chosen to subsidize, and you can see what that cost is for the library.
Made a small increase for the request of the library.
Right, some repairs and equipment, so forth, minor. Municipal properties, the big change here, the increase is some of, this includes municipal properties include the borough, building and other municipal buildings. So you've got utilities and maintenance and that sort of thing. You see the big change here is money that has been spent and will need to continue to be spent for the municipal building repairs. That was part of the overall capital expenditure plan. So that's just following the plan for that. That's why that's up over the prior year. Parks. There's some capital expenses in there. And some other minor expenses. You can see where there's some repairs, but that's been budgeted before. Big change is some capital expense. It's put in there for some equipment. Again, that was part of the plan for the equipment. And that's why this year's, the budget for 23 is proposed to be higher than the budget had been in 2022. Okay, police. I'm sorry, which one?
Lawn.
Yeah, you can turn without a radius. Had to learn that too. Okay. Police, obviously, there are some things that come in through the police department as far as income, various income sources. There's a slight increase in basic costs for insurances and salaries. It says
Why is the hospitalization, say, a 5% increase, but well, we budgeted 78, so we assuming that the trend is going to be.
No, we had budgeted last year.
Oh, that's the January. Okay. Good, okay. That makes-
Or is that 50 grand that we budgeted in 2022 and then delay? Or are we at the end of this year, we will use that 50? Pretty much every year, we have what, four? We have 4 police vehicles. And so pretty much every year, there's a new one that has to come into service. And we retire one. That's about the way it goes. So that 50,000 will get paid, right?
Yes.
We're gonna use it. Because it looks like, you know,
Well, some of these, you're right.
The car is at the outfitters, to get. The car is here, but it's getting it upfitted. That is still, I don't know if, I talked to the chief 2 weeks ago.
right,
still.
it's still because,
So,
yeah,
if we get the invoice, we will pay it this year.
we're hoping to have it in service.
Other questions? In some of these too, you'll see some notes where there's a budget, there's not been an actual. Again, some of those are coming in Q4, some of those are because certain things, as Doug has explained, but you budget for it. Like in case of an emergency, you have to have something budgeted. If you don't have the emergency, you don't have to spend it. So that leaves you with what it's costing, that they're not over and above any fines or fees that they're collecting.
So we're asking for reduction or just a slight increase in the budget from last year
Correct.
compared to what would be for next year. Okay.
And some of that's fuel.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a small amount, but
That's
Did-
where the tabs become important because it's easier to wrap your head around very quickly.
Did we budget for any police department recruitment around the retirement of the? police
that'll
chief?
come in the next
That's
budget.
2024.
Yeah, so we'll have to be talking
So do
about
we have a
that.
tickler or something
Right.
to remember for that? Okay.
I'll make sure we remember.
Mhm. Thank you.
Okay. Public Works. Again, the increase in this one over the prior year has to do with the planned capital expenditures. There's only a little bit of income that comes in from some reimbursements on things and payment. But here's the big part is the capital expenditures that were again pre-approved. They're part of what we're doing. To the chipper, some equipment, so forth, beginning a lease. Other than that, it's pretty much, so you keep in mind, we've added, about 75,000 there. Some other minor changes. And that's why the difference from 1.1 million, a little over $1 million to $1.2 million.
Just if anybody, there's the UTV, that is kind of like a, I don't want to say a Razor, John Deere, and we can actually put a plow on those, and that's what's going to do the sidewalks. So that's what a UTV is. It's kind of like a quad, but it's much beefier and it's made for commercial removal of snow.
So they just drive on the sidewalks in that thing?
They will.
Like an ATV?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
We rent it, no. Out. Self-servicing. I know. You could put Doug on the ATV. Right, put Doug out there. On the ATV.
Okay, go to recreation. Recreation, it has income from the various things you charge fees for, 21,200. There's an increase in expense for programming. I'm sure somebody here would know what that is.
Rec board asked, the rec board wants to do 6 events a year, I believe. And then, so they had asked for an increase in, their programming money.
So not necessarily something that I think we should, do right now, but I keep wondering about community activities versus recreation and whether that actually should be combined. I mean, do you see, Doug, a real difference? Well, see, that's just what I asked too. But except for community events. Yeah.
It kind of goes back to the chart of accounts. it's broken, the chart of accounts is broken between parks, pool
Right.
and recreation. So there's three separate line item numbers for those.
Right, but then we've got
expenditures.
community activities. That's what I'm looking at is community activities versus recreation.
Yeah, that- Community activities is like a made up, I mean, that's something that's been created.
So,
Community activity seems to, you've got, somebody must have divided this at some point in your history between the two. And I think you raised a question, it should still be divided.
that is my question. It's essentially some more community events. I mean, I think if we look at
We
what
could
they're
have
proposing for
The rec
next
board
year.
come to the next budget meeting and they can outline what it is that they want.
Well, I
that
think if
extra
we
money
actually
for.
even just look at the newsletter, there's a list of the planned activities for next year.
And I think in prior years, we could not have activities for the past 2 years because of COVID. So a lot of those things were either canceled or there wasn't a lot of spend on them for the past 2 years.
But I think that I think we really should be considering combining community activities and recreation, because I really think we're just kind of arbitrarily splitting those two, and they really are all community activities.
Justin, do you have any comments on that?
I mean, it doesn't make a difference to me whether or not they're under the same account here, but like what my biggest concern just comes from the fact that we're lumping a lot of things under this miscellaneous, like doubling the budget for miscellaneous expenses and then saying it's for programming, where in community activities, we have it like very clearly broken out that we have budgets for the big community activities. Like it would be great to have these broken out.
I agree with that. And so I think that maybe we should look at doing an exercise to do that and get those broken out. I think you're right, Justin.
Yeah, we should definitely have Jackie or somebody like help come up with a list and expected budgets for each of whatever these programming pieces are, so that we can actually be like hold it, like be accountable for it. Because
I don't think that should be very difficult to do.
So for our next meeting, we should have that.
Yeah, so when we
Okay.
come back, we know, so on the one hand, we generally know what these are, and nobody's got any real questions or concerns or proposals to change the numbers, but we'll pull these two together and we'll itemize that 15,000 in miscellaneous expenses.
You know what we can do, because if it's less disruption for Doug's office and Charisma, the ledger numbers can stay distinct. If you feel that's important, we can simply combine them onto one grouping.
Whatever's going to cause the least change.
Okay.
Couldn't you even have just line 17 broken apart below it by the different events? But again, this is 15,000. We're spending a lot of time on this, so. We've got.
This is what Justin actually referenced earlier tonight. They want to get like a portable sound system when they do the events down at the park. That they have
on the
some.
stage.
because right now they've been using like one that's donated or something. Is that right, Doug?
I think it gets borrowed from somebody every
Yeah.
time.
It doesn't belong to the borough, and sometimes it doesn't meet their needs. So we were working on with Hollywood to get a quote for like 2 large portable sound systems with like their own microphones and whatever, and they could pair them up if they needed to, I think. So just something like that to make things easier when they run things down at the park.
Okay.
Other questions here?
Nope.
Okay. Sanitation. There was a fee increase because the contract we have had a fee increase. And we do have at this point in time, between what we pay out on what we hope to collect and what we pay out on the contract, we have a slight benefit in our favor. But keep in mind, we have to deal with no pays.
That's right. And in the past, we haven't had,
Well, between what you budgeted in 2021 and what you got paid, you had about 63,000. that
right.
Didn't pay.
Yep.
So that's really not extra money to spend.
And just, so the resident, their trash is gonna go up $15. Of that 15, 12 is going right to waste management. And we're still trying to recoup our collection issues in the past, so. The majority of that is going straight to waste management. It's not coming to our pocket.
So should that be an expense here? That's not showing?
What expense?
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
So it does show here that there's an increase in the fees for collection, but the contract is lower than that because the goal is to collect fees that we haven't collected
Right.
in the past. Okay, good. All right.
Okay, we get to shade trees. Shade trees is one of the expense items. And with what is budgeted there this year, which is an increase for Steubenville streets, that will increase to 80,000.
So do we think that's actually going to happen this year?
Dave actually talked with Mary, and we are gonna be doing that this year.
Is this not something? No, 2023, this, we're talking 2023 budget. Are you saying?
And again, when these numbers were put in, it was August. But yeah, so just in the last week, it seems that we're going to be going through and identifying there was a branch that fell last Christmas. We looked at the trees, had quotes, and then Shade Tree had finally has given us the go ahead. So that work will start.
It'll start, but it won't be all of it. I'm just saying, because we'll end up, if it ends up being done this year, then to your point, it'll be over budget this year.
I don't remember, it's just been a theory, but I've not had anything finalized in shade tree meetings around that. The suggestion during those meetings was that we do a phased approach of we identify the worst trees, and those are the ones that we remove and or replace or put them into the tree person's yard, the resident's yard. But I didn't know the whole project would be happening.
Oh, so we're talking, when I see the Steuben Street trees, we're talking about what, taking out all of the those pears, or what exactly? are
Not
we talking-
taking out, after the branch fell last year, we had 4 companies come out and take a look, and they identified the problem trees, what needed to be cut, what needed to be trimmed, and that's what this is.
So we're just still trying to nurse these trees past their life
This-
expectancy.
Last council said, make sure that Steuben Street is safe and we don't get any more branches falling.
Right?
So that's what we identified.
Okay, just wanting to be clear about what we're doing, because I know that there was previous talk about redoing all of those trees because they're past their life and
Yeah,
they continue to cause problems.
There were quotes that we received earlier this year about maintenance on the Steuben Street trees. It's a project. It's a very large project and one that, will need support from the community. It's definitely a safety issue. Because the tree, every year that goes by, those trees get older and they get weaker.
That's right.
Because that's what pear trees do. They grow like this and then they get very weak. So.
And then we have the utilities chopping the heck out of them.
And you do
too.
that and they get weaker and weaker and
Right,
weaker. So
and then
they are
the-
beautiful, but they're not
Right.
the future,
So-
unfortunately.
So is there an opportunity to look for grant funding to help us replace those?
replacement, the difficulty is we can't plant trees anymore in that strip.
Mhm.
So they have to go in people's yards, so it will look different because it will be small trees that will be scattered.
Yeah, so that thing that we think about in the spring, it's
The canopy.
pretty for a week, but it's
Mhm.
increasingly dangerous.
Right. So it's a
Okay.
shade tree initiative. It has to be discussed, and I think eventually we have to discuss it as council to see what direction we want to go with
Mhm.
that. And it is extremely expensive, more than that figure to do any type of major.
And 30,000 of that is just routine maintenance, and then the other 30 is the additional.
Try to do anything in that area that would be able to maintain trees, we should start by talking to PennDOT.
So maybe we need to be getting shade tree and engineering together.
We are here for the budget.
It's part, yeah, I think this is the reason what we got estimated. If we stick here, I think it's a good topic from a shade tree.
For this
and
year.
Okay.
For next year.
Better talk to Mary. She gave Dave a green light. Go ahead. Get those trees burned.
As part of those agreements. That was earlier.
Yeah.
in the year. Yeah.
All that. was-
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
If they
Back
were
to the
part of
budget.
that
I'm going to move to the
contract,
next
Yeah.
tab.
Yeah.
Then we're good. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, the next tab is a swimming pool. And again, this is one of these things, when you look at it, this is an important piece for you to be able to tell friends, neighbors, people who ask you. You know, yes, we collect you collect fees at the pool, but you've got a lot of expenses at the pool. And at the end of the day, the borough is subsidizing it about $90,000.
Didn't look at this that carefully, but if we've got almost 134,000 this year in revenue, is there a reason that we've budgeted so lower than what we budgeted in 2022?
2022 was like the first year back fully out of COVID. Don't know if we're going to get those again. So to be on the conservative side, I lowered those. You can more than welcome
Okay,
to
well,
increase.
that's fine to understand what you've done, and if we do better, then we decrease the subsidy.
Right, and I think the community, the CRCE committee looks at this and the pricing, and who knows what we'll have, especially from a wage perspective. We had an increase in wages that was not budgeted the prior year because we did not know that was going to happen.
I mean, there are ways, and it would be counseled, that you could run this pool more efficiently, but your service level goes down.
Mhm.
So that's
And
always the
we know
rub.
what happens when we try to do that.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Are we not including wages in the 2023 budget? Because that's blank.
No, it's another
it's on
line.
the admin line. On the admin line.
It's there. It's down, it's just one line down. Reason for that is it's sort of consistency across the various classes. They all have the same wage line, but it's now listed for what it is seasonal staff. It was there, so it was, the last full season was 118, we budgeted 120 for next year. You see the difference? There were a couple things that moved just to get consistency across the accounts.
And part-time is actually regular employees that work part-time like season. The seasonal help are temporary employees, so that's why there would be that differentiation.
Should we budget for higher wages considering we had to raise wages last year, like this past year? Like, do we expect to hold again, or would we be safer budgeting more for salary given, and then undershooting it if we don't have to raise wages again? Because I think we'll have a bigger problem if we can't get people to work at the pool than if we budget a little bit too much, right?
I don't think wages will increase like they did from a labor economy standpoint, like they did this year. I think they're going to go down because there's going to be a shift away from escalating wages, which wages jumped on 30% in a very short period of time this year. And I don't see that happening again next year where we're going to then go another 30% or go another even 10 and 15%. So I'm comfortable with where it is.
So that's the main budget items on the classes. You have a road fund where you obviously have money that comes in that goes into the road fund. You have things you have designated to spend it on, and it gets transferred out to cover other costs that are that are the road fund's obligation. So it ends up, it's designed that what comes in is used for the road and it goes out.
One of the other things that's new in this year's budget is the road fund and sewer fund are actually paying a significant portion of the assistant manager, operations manager, whatever we do, because the majority of those duties are going to take place in those areas. So that has freed up money from the general side, which has normally not been there.
I think that's a really good move.
Sewer fund obviously is impacted because there's an increase in Alcoasand fees.
And
Right, and then what a corresponding one with ours, exactly. There's some additional expenses in there because they were planned expenses. And again, it's to get us through to, we've got money that's coming in that's being spent for the purposes it was brought in to be spent for. So the only one we didn't go, and I won't go into it, we can go into as much detail as you want, but now that we've covered the various subsections and subclasses, we can go back to admin. And this is where other things could come in, as you had talked about. You know, you've got what's coming in revenue is real estate taxes, transfer taxes, earned income taxes and fees, and so forth, which generates the revenue that comes in. There's no increase in the tax rate that built into this. There is an anticipation of perhaps some better collection, not aggressive collection, but just better collection because we're over COVID. People are back, things are stabilizing. That's something that we've talked in finance committee, the council should talk about. At some point, do they want to be more aggressive on collection? It's always sensitive when people can't afford to pay, because you want people to pay what they're being billed. And again, if you look at this, you'll see that there are some blanks between what's been budgeted and if something has actually come in. And again, there are grants that are coming in Q4. Some of them have already come in September. We've seen them come in, about 300,000 came in September. And there's some transfers that are made at year end that'll bring that into expectation. So we would expect this to close out where it was anticipated to be with budget when everything comes through. Right now, we're showing some surpluses because there's some movements that have to be made at year end. We get back to the combined budget then. And the combined budget takes all the pieces we've just looked at, puts them all together, and determines that income, we had budgeted 13,000,008. Oh my God, what's that happening? Don't do that to me.
Yeah, what the income? Fine.
I know, something's stuck. Well, I know what happened. Okay, never mind. This is not a good thing. It's because I'm tired.
Escape, maybe escape. Yeah,
Pardon me?
escape. Yeah, because you're up top, actually.
Yeah, this is the number I lost.
Oh, control Z.
Control Z.
Does the same thing as the button she was clicking in the top left.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. It wasn't, yeah, what happened was I hit something on the keyboard. Should be just the same formula as this one.
Keep on doing control Z, it'll come back.
It's back.
Oh.
Okay. We're budgeting 3,000,001 for next year. And there's a lot of factors that you can go through each tab. You can understand where the differences are and where we're coming from. Part of it was get a catch up that happened. Doug can
13.
correct me if I'm wrong on this, but some things
13,000,001, right? 13.1, not 3.
Right, 13,800 was what we had budgeted for 2022. We're budgeting 13,100 for 2023. Because some things came in because of COVID that had been budgeted for 2021 that came in 2022. Expenses, again, we've gone through all the tabs. We identified all of those. We get down to the end of the day. So say this is easier to digest tab by tab than it is to just run down the whole thing. And we arrive at what we have as the total expenses, which include any transfers that have to be made, to arrive at the moment at a budget that is balanced.
Takeaways from this are there would be no real estate tax increase.
Mhm.
There would be an increase to the sewer tax and the trash
Correct.
tax, but no other. And just
And-
very shortly, the ARPA funds are built into here
Mm-hmm.
and as part of this budget. So it's something to think about because we will only have ARPA funds for the next 2 years.
Correct.
And then that is it. So then we have to find
And
other
that's,
areas of revenue or
you know, you all have been very conscientious about securing grant money to help extend. So grant money to help extend the bond. And so as that money comes in and it pays for things, it's enabled you to do more. But as you begin to run through that grant money, you run through the bond money, then you have to go back to the old fashioned work of here's the tax money and here's what we're going to do with it. How's it going to get done? And that's one of the reasons why when I first started working with y'all, I kept stressing the point that the bond budget can't just be year to year. It has to be for the length. This capital expense budget has to be 5 years and updated on a regular basis because it's easy enough to say, well, can that wait for next year? Well, if next year you've already budgeted for 3 things that should have been done the year before, eventually there's a day of reckoning that comes when you can't do it all. So this is why I keep stressing this idea, if you can't just look at the immediate. The immediate is important, but we've got to have it in the context of going forward. So this is the first draft. Any questions? There's a lot of notes on here. If you want to look at things, you can always ask more detailed questions. Doug will be able to answer a lot of them. We may have notes in ours. If you look at this page 2, there's also the very first tab. A lot of the notes incorporated right there. If you really want to know what the question was and what the answer was. Tried to provide it for you line by line. Any other questions? You haven't won an argument just because you've silenced the audience, so I know.
well, I think we asked as we went along, which
I
was
appreciate
good.
that.
Can you tell us about next meeting and the advertise or the public announcement of it, and then the final vote, like next step?
So based on what we've gone through and that we really don't have really anything major to change or to argue over, we'll be making the minor adjustments that we talked about. And what we should plan on doing in our first meeting in November is to approve to advertise. And if we do that, Doug, will we be ready to adopt at the last meeting in November?
Is that our schedule? That's not our schedule. Yeah, that's not.
20, no.
No, because we can't advertise that quickly.
That's the problem.
Yeah, so.
You could if the paper ran 7 days.
So we
Okay.
have the
So,
10th
but we're still going to be on track because the
Yeah.
goal,
is
that-
the
I'm gonna
8th.
try tomorrow. I'm gonna map it all out.
Okay.
Ordinances. I'm doubtful though,
okay,
but I will try.
but so it sounds like we're still going to be on track for the schedule of
Yeah.
approval first meeting in December, which typically, if we do that, we generally cancel the last meeting of December because it's Christmas week.
Okay, yeah, in our plan, we have one more workshop.
Right,
Which is the November 10th meeting. So we
Right.
have one more workshop where we would finalize this, advertise, and then adopt on December 18th. Or 8th, sorry, at that meeting.
mhm.
And then that would be it.
So there's a snowball's chance that we might be able to
I'm
approve
gonna
it.
try.
Okay. It's okay. I
It's
mean,
in my best interest to make it happen too, so.
there you
The
go.
21st is a pushed up meeting too. so
Yeah,
That's
so that's the
the
problem.
Monday. It's the Monday of Thanksgiving week, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
that's what our schedule
That's,
is.
yeah.
It's just that this has been going fairly well and, you know, it's worth a try to get it out, to get it approved earlier.
Okay.
Pardon? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, this is, and having been a part of both of them, this is very easy to read. Has lots of good information, so kudos to Doug and Marilyn and Coletta and the Finance Committee for working on all of this.
I've got a great team. I was traveling today back to Cleveland and all this is happening while I'm checking my phone and they're both talking and then sending me emails.
Good.
I'm blessed with a really good team.
All right,
Okay, I'll see some of you in the morning.
yeah, and
Oh, yes.
10 hours or less.
Well, you and I are gonna be,
At the Crafton Elementary School.
and we're supposed to be there. They're expecting us at 9, so we should be there like 10 to 9.
Okay, yeah. And
Okay.
I just bring these.
Yes, yes.
Then we have our.
See the fence.
What do you need here?
I'm gonna need that.
Oh, yeah, have that up. I just took the, probably took the battery out. That's my habit whenever I'm
Oh.
gonna take the battery out. I turn it off.
Oh, you turned it, okay, there we go.
I need a little, was our fob there? That's fine.
Wait, is this yours? Where's
No,
mine?
Here's mine.
Oh,
That's my habit. I take the fob out, I check the battery, turn it off. I just did it instead of mine. Sorry.